Have you ever given your time, your attention, your loyalty, only to realize that the person you value doesn't value you the same way? Most people respond with desperation. They chase harder, wait longer, and hope things will change. But Marcus Aurelius taught a different path. A path of self-respect, inner strength, and emotional discipline. In today's speech, you'll discover why seeking validation from someone who ignores your worth weakens your spirit, and what a truly strong person does instead. The moment you stop chasing what refuses to choose you, you begin reclaiming your power. Listen closely, because these Stoic lessons could completely change how you see yourself, your relationships, and your future. One of the greatest mistakes a person can make is placing their sense of worth in the hands of someone else. When you seek validation from another person, you silently give them power over your emotions, your confidence, and even your peace of mind. The moment your happiness becomes dependent on how someone responds to you, you stop being the master of your own life. You begin living according to their attention, their approval, and their recognition. This is not strength. It is a subtle form of self-imposed captivity. Many people do not realize they are trapped in this cycle. They believe they simply care deeply about someone. They tell themselves that their desire for appreciation is natural. But there is a difference between enjoying appreciation and needing it. Appreciation is pleasant when it comes. Validation becomes dangerous when it becomes necessary. When you need someone else's approval to feel valuable, you surrender control of your emotional state. Imagine a man who constantly checks his phone, waiting for a message from someone who rarely responds. Every notification creates hope. Every silence creates anxiety. His mood rises and falls based on another person's actions. He may appear strong on the outside, but internally he has handed over the keys to his emotional well-being. His confidence no longer comes from who he is. It comes from whether someone chooses to acknowledge him. Marcus Aurelius understood a timeless truth: your value does not increase when someone notices you, and it does not decrease when someone ignores you. The opinions of others are external events. They exist outside your control. Stoicism teaches that peace comes from focusing on what belongs to you and letting go of what does not. Your character belongs to you. Your actions belong to you. Your principles belong to you. Another person's approval does not. The need for validation often begins with insecurity. Deep down, many people doubt their own worth. Because they have not fully accepted themselves, they look outward for confirmation. They search for someone who will tell them they are enough. They crave signs that they matter. Every compliment feels like proof. Every rejection feels like evidence of failure. But validation is a fragile foundation upon which to build your identity. It is unstable because people are unpredictable. Their opinions change. Their moods shift. Their priorities evolve. If your self-worth depends on their approval, your confidence will constantly fluctuate. One day you will feel unstoppable. The next day you will feel invisible. Your emotional state will become a reflection of forces you cannot control. A Stoic mind refuses to operate this way. A Stoic understands that true confidence must come from within. It must be built upon something permanent rather than something temporary. When your confidence is rooted in your values, your discipline, and your integrity, it cannot be taken away by another person's indifference. Consider how much energy people waste trying to impress others. They alter their personality. They suppress their opinions. They pretend to be someone they are not. They constantly analyze conversations, wondering whether they said the right thing. They overthink messages. They seek reassurance. Their focus shifts away from self-improvement and toward gaining acceptance. This pursuit is exhausting because it has no endpoint. No amount of validation is ever enough for someone who depends on it. The moment they receive approval, they experience temporary relief. Soon afterward, they begin seeking more. The cycle repeats endlessly. They become emotionally dependent on external praise. The strongest individuals understand that approval is not a necessity. They appreciate respect when it is given, but they do not require it to function. Their self-image remains intact regardless of who acknowledges them. They know who they are because they have spent time developing themselves, rather than chasing recognition. When someone does not value you, the natural temptation is to work harder for their attention. You may think that if you become more helpful, more attractive, more successful, or more available, they will finally recognize your worth. But this mindset places your focus in the wrong direction. Instead of asking how to become worthy, ask why you believe someone else's recognition determines your worth in the first place. A diamond remains valuable even when it is hidden underground. Its worth does not depend on whether people can see it. Likewise, your value exists independently of another person's perception. Someone's inability to recognize your qualities does not erase those qualities. Their blindness does not diminish your character. Many people spend years trying to convince others to appreciate them. They pour effort into relationships that offer little in return. They tolerate disrespect. They accept neglect. They remain loyal to people who repeatedly demonstrate indifference, all because they hope that one day their value will finally be acknowledged. The Stoic perspective challenges this behavior. It reminds us that self-respect requires boundaries. It requires the courage to walk away from situations where your presence is consistently undervalued. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of recognition that your time and energy are precious resources. Seeking validation often creates a dangerous imbalance. The more you chase approval, the less attractive you become. Desperation is rarely respected. People naturally gravitate toward those who possess quiet confidence. Confidence signals self-sufficiency. It communicates that a person values themselves regardless of external recognition. This does not mean becoming arrogant. Stoicism is not about believing you are superior to others. It is about understanding that your worth is not up for negotiation. It is not determined by popularity, attention, or praise. It is determined by the quality of your character and the consistency of your actions. Think about how often fear of rejection influences behavior. People remain silent when they should speak. They agree when they should disagree. They compromise their principles to avoid disapproval. In doing so, they sacrifice authenticity for acceptance. They gain temporary approval but lose respect for themselves. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly emphasized the importance of living according to reason rather than emotion. When validation becomes your objective, reason is replaced by emotional dependency. Decisions become driven by fear, insecurity, and the desire to please. A person loses sight of what is right because they become preoccupied with what is popular. Freedom begins when you stop measuring yourself through the eyes of others. It begins when you recognize that no amount of approval can compensate for a lack of self-respect. If you do not value yourself, external validation will never satisfy you. If you do value yourself, external validation becomes unnecessary. There is immense power in becoming indifferent to approval, not hostile toward it, not dismissive of genuine appreciation, simply independent from it. You can enjoy praise without needing it. You can accept compliments without relying on them. You can appreciate recognition without making it the foundation of your identity. The person who no longer seeks validation experiences a unique kind of peace. They are not constantly worried about how they are perceived. They do not spend hours analyzing the opinions of others. They focus their attention on becoming better rather than appearing better. This shift changes everything. Energy that was once spent chasing approval can now be invested in growth. Time that was wasted seeking attention can be used to develop skills, strengthen character, and pursue meaningful goals. Life becomes more productive because it is guided by purpose rather than perception. One of the most liberating realizations is understanding that not everyone will appreciate you, and that is perfectly acceptable. Different people value different qualities. Some will understand your intentions. Others will misunderstand them. Some will respect your efforts. Others will overlook them. This is part of life. Trying to win universal approval is impossible. Even the wisest individuals in history faced criticism. Even the most admired leaders encountered opposition. If people of extraordinary character could not satisfy everyone, neither can you. The desire to be universally liked often leads people away from authenticity. They become versions of themselves designed to please others. Yet the more they abandon their true nature, the emptier they feel. Approval gained through performance never feels secure because it is not based on who they genuinely are. Stoicism encourages honesty with oneself. It asks a simple question: are you living according to your values, or according to the expectations of others? The answer reveals whether you are truly free. When you stop chasing validation, you reclaim your power. Your confidence becomes self-generated. Your peace becomes self-sustained. Your motivation becomes internal rather than external. You no longer depend on others to confirm what you already know. You know your effort. You know your sacrifices. You know your intentions. You know the battles you have fought in silence. These realities exist regardless of whether anyone acknowledges them. A person who understands this becomes resilient. Rejection no longer destroys them. Criticism no longer defines them. Indifference no longer controls them. They remain steady because their foundation is internal. The world will always contain people who fail to recognize your worth. Some will overlook your kindness. Some will ignore your loyalty. Some will underestimate your potential. Their opinions are reflections of their perspective, not measurements of your value. The moment you stop seeking validation is the moment you begin living with greater dignity. You stop begging for attention and start investing in yourself. You stop proving and start becoming. You stop chasing recognition and start building substance. Your focus shifts from being seen to becoming someone worth seeing. This transformation does not happen overnight. Years of conditioning often teach people to seek approval. Society rewards attention. Social environments encourage comparison. Relationships sometimes reinforce dependency. Breaking free requires awareness and discipline. Every time you resist the urge to seek validation, you strengthen your independence. Every time you choose self-respect over approval, you build confidence. Every time you focus on your actions rather than others' reactions, you become stronger. Eventually, you reach a point where your value is no longer determined by external opinions. You understand that respect begins with self-respect. You recognize that confidence grows from action, not praise. You realize that the most powerful approval is the approval you give yourself when you live according to your principles. Knowing your true worth is one of the most important lessons a person can learn, yet it is also one of the most difficult. Many people spend years searching for value in places where it cannot be found. They look for it in relationships, social status, appearance, wealth, attention, and approval. They believe that if they can gain enough recognition from the outside world, they will finally feel valuable on the inside. But true worth does not come from external rewards. It comes from understanding who you are when everything external is stripped away. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the importance of self-awareness. He understood that a person who does not know their own worth becomes vulnerable to manipulation, disappointment, and emotional dependence. When you fail to recognize your value, you allow others to define it for you. Their opinions become your mirror. Their treatment becomes your measurement. Their approval becomes your source of confidence. This creates a dangerous situation because people are inconsistent. One person may admire you while another ignores you. One person may appreciate your qualities while another fails to notice them. If your worth depends on their judgment, your self-esteem will constantly rise and fall according to circumstances you cannot control. A person who knows their worth operates differently. Their confidence is not based on popularity. It is not dependent on attention. It is not tied to the number of people who support them. Their confidence comes from an internal understanding of their character, principles, and values. Many individuals confuse worth with achievement. They believe they become valuable only after accomplishing something significant. They think their value depends on success. If they succeed, they feel important. If they fail, they feel worthless. This mindset creates a cycle of emotional instability because success is never guaranteed. Your worth is not determined by your latest victory or your most recent setback. A temporary outcome cannot define a permanent value. Every person experiences failure. Every person faces rejection. Every person encounters obstacles. These experiences do not erase their worth. Imagine a skilled craftsman who spends years mastering his craft. One day he creates something exceptional. Another day he makes mistakes. His value as a craftsman does not disappear because of a single imperfect result. His worth is rooted in his dedication, experience, and commitment to improvement. The same principle applies to life. Your value does not vanish when things go wrong. Difficult circumstances may affect your situation, but they do not diminish your worth as a human being. One reason people struggle to know their worth is because they constantly compare themselves to others. Comparison has become one of the most common sources of insecurity. People look at someone else's achievements and conclude they are falling behind. They compare appearances, lifestyles, careers, relationships, and possessions. The problem with comparison is that it creates an endless race. There will always be someone richer, more successful, more attractive, or more accomplished. If your self-worth depends on outperforming everyone else, you will never feel secure. Marcus Aurelius understood that each person walks a unique path. Your responsibility is not to become someone else. Your responsibility is to become the best version of yourself. Comparing your journey to another person's journey distracts you from your own growth. A tree does not compare itself to the tree beside it. It simply grows according to its nature. One may become taller, another may become wider. Each fulfills its purpose without competition. Human beings often create unnecessary suffering by measuring themselves against standards that have nothing to do with their own path. And knowing your worth requires recognizing your strengths, but it also requires accepting your imperfections. Many people believe confidence means believing you are flawless. In reality, confidence comes from understanding both your strengths and weaknesses without allowing either to define you completely. A person who knows their worth does not deny their flaws. They acknowledge them honestly. They work to improve where improvement is needed. At the same time, they refuse to view themselves as worthless because of their imperfections. Perfection is an impossible standard. No human being can meet it. Chasing perfection often leads to frustration because every mistake feels like proof of inadequacy. Self-worth built on perfection is fragile because perfection itself is unattainable. The Stoic approach is different. Instead of demanding perfection, it emphasizes progress. A person gains confidence by consistently striving to improve. They judge themselves by effort and character rather than flawless performance. Another obstacle to knowing your worth is emotional dependence on relationships. Many people tie their identity to how someone else feels about them. When the relationship is strong, they feel valuable. When the relationship weakens, they feel empty. This places enormous power in the hands of another person. It means your self-esteem can be damaged by someone else's choices, moods, or priorities. Such dependence creates anxiety because your emotional stability becomes linked to something beyond your control. Knowing your worth means understanding that your value exists independently of any relationship. Relationships can enrich your life, but they should not define your identity. Someone can appreciate you deeply, and your worth remains unchanged. Someone can leave your life entirely, and your worth remains unchanged. The presence or absence of another person does not determine your value. It may affect your emotions. It may change your circumstances. But it does not alter who you are at your core. Many people stay in unhealthy situations because they underestimate their worth. They tolerate disrespect because they fear being alone. They accept poor treatment because they believe they cannot do better. They lower their standards because they doubt their value. A person who knows their worth behaves differently. They recognize that respect is not something to beg for. It is something to expect. They understand that maintaining self-respect is more important than maintaining any relationship that consistently undermines it. This does not mean becoming arrogant or demanding. It means refusing to accept treatment that contradicts your dignity. Self-worth creates healthy boundaries. It teaches you what you will tolerate and what you will not. The world often sends conflicting messages about value. It encourages people to measure themselves through material success. Expensive possessions become symbols of worth. Social status becomes a marker of importance. Public recognition becomes evidence of value. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates that these things are temporary. Wealth can disappear. Fame can fade. Status can change. If your worth depends on external conditions, it becomes vulnerable to circumstances. Marcus Aurelius was one of the most powerful men in the world. Yet he constantly reminded himself that external achievements were not the source of true value. He understood that character mattered more than position. Integrity mattered more than recognition. Wisdom mattered more than applause. This perspective remains relevant today. The qualities that truly determine your worth cannot be bought, borrowed, or taken away. Courage, honesty, discipline, resilience, kindness, and integrity are internal qualities. They belong to you regardless of external conditions. Knowing your worth also requires spending time alone with yourself. Many people avoid solitude because it forces them to confront their thoughts. They stay busy, distracted, and occupied because silence feels uncomfortable. Yet self-awareness grows in moments of reflection. When you spend time examining your beliefs, values, and motivations, you gain clarity about who you are. You stop relying on others to define you because you begin defining yourself. A person who knows their worth does not constantly seek reassurance. They do not need endless confirmation from others. They trust their own judgment. They recognize their strengths. They understand their principles. This confidence appears quiet rather than loud. It does not need constant display. It does not seek attention. It does not demand recognition. It simply exists. Many people mistake confidence for arrogance because they misunderstand its nature. Arrogance often hides insecurity. It seeks superiority. It craves validation. It depends on comparison. True confidence comes from self-knowledge. It does not require proving anything. It does not need to dominate others. It remains stable regardless of external reactions. Knowing your worth changes how you respond to criticism. Instead of being destroyed by every negative opinion, you evaluate criticism rationally. If it contains truth, you learn from it. If it does not, you move forward without allowing it to define you. This mindset creates emotional resilience. You become less vulnerable to the judgments of others because your identity is grounded in self-awareness rather than public opinion. Rejection also loses much of its power. Many people interpret rejection as evidence that they are not good enough. They assume that being rejected means they lack value. In reality, rejection often reflects compatibility rather than worth. Not every opportunity is meant for every person. Not every relationship is meant to last. Not every door is meant to open. A person who knows their worth understands this distinction. They do not internalize every setback as a personal failure. They recognize that circumstances, timing, and individual preferences play significant roles in life. The ability to recognize your worth influences every area of life. It affects your decisions, relationships, goals, and mindset. It shapes the standards you maintain and the opportunities you pursue. When you know your worth, you stop settling for less than you deserve. You stop chasing people who consistently overlook you. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces where you are not appreciated. You stop questioning your value every time someone fails to recognize it. Instead, you invest your energy in becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable. You focus on growth rather than approval. You develop qualities that create lasting confidence, rather than temporary validation. The journey toward knowing your worth is not about convincing yourself that you are perfect. It is about understanding that your value is inherent. It exists before success arrives. It remains after failure occurs. It survives rejection, criticism, and disappointment. Your worth is reflected in your character, your actions, your resilience, and your willingness to continue growing despite adversity. It is found in your ability to remain true to your principles when circumstances become difficult. It is found in your commitment to self-respect even when others fail to offer respect. It is found in the quiet understanding that your value does not require permission, recognition, or approval from anyone else.